Hello, and welcome to today's video on how to implement the MAM SDK for containment in a Citrix endpoint management service. The agenda of today's call is to show you the basic data flow of a device for a full endpoint management service deployment. Then we'll talk a little bit about the MAM SDK core and help you understand where to find that information. We'll then talk about the MAM SDK containment integrated in your app, show you how to integrate the policy configurations into your console, and then show you testing of that policy in your app on a device. So it's important that you understand the basic data flow inside the service. So with the endpoint management service, you typically have cloud connectors installed in your network and a NetScaler or Citrix gateway. And the idea is that the cloud connectors are there so that the cloud service can talk to Active Directory, or if you have certificate integration embedded into your service, then it's there. And also if you have virtual apps and desktops configured, then the enumeration of those apps inside of Secure Hub would come through the cloud connector as well. So when you talk about device management side of the house and policy management, for example, those basic configurations go from the device to the endpoint management service and talk, and then if you need to authenticate, they go through the cloud connector. But the difference is that your client data, so the data that would typically be traversing from your application, right, going into internal web services, web pages, etc., inside your network, that will pass through the gateway. So that traffic doesn't traverse through the cloud and go through the cloud connectors. They go direct from the device to the gateway. So now let's move on to the documentation. And this is a great place for you to come to start getting the basic understanding of what we're going to be doing, and help you understand as you need to integrate other pieces of the framework into your app. So you notice in the page we're breaking out based on platform and framework that you may be using on that platform. Today we're working with Swift, so we're going to go into the iOS and iPad section. And you notice there's a breakdown here of the overview, and notice core that is specified here is required. The core implementation is not part of this video. We assume that you've already watched the video and read the documentation on how to get the core integrated into Xcode. There's a number of things in there that are explained that are fairly in-depth, and it's not part of this video, so you should certainly go back and watch that. And then there's a getting started section here, and for our situation we're looking at implementing containment, right? You can do multiples of these in a given application, but let's drill into containment for a moment here. And you notice it's showing inside of here the frameworks that need to be integrated in Xcode and what that would look like. Now, certainly this shows you some basics of what you need to do, but is by no means exhaustive. So certainly don't just take this as the basics. You need to really go back and look at that video and understand how to do the integration, because there's a number of settings inside of Xcode that have to be done. And if you drill down in here, you'll see some examples about implementing the core and the containment, and there's examples in Objective-C and Swift. We're going to take these examples and embed them into our Swift application. And don't forget to come down here and look at the other sections. So, while this is a kind of an overview of getting started, inside of these subsections, there's a containment area, and it talks about what it can block, what it can control, information around the delegates and the methods, and then further information inside of some values that you can read, such as inactivity timers and things like that, so you can understand how these are implemented and more information about it. But you don't really need to totally pay attention to this at the moment. We're going to drill into all of this and do this inside of our application. Okay, so now we switched over to Xcode and into our Swift application. And one of the first things we're going to do here is import the CTX MAM core. I had already done the network, so that was already there, but I need to import the MAM containment as well. And then in the class, we need to derive so we can leverage our delegate. So we'll integrate that piece into it. And the next thing we need to do is put in the code to initialize the delegate for containment. And so then we're going to switch to the view controller, and what we're going to do is we're going to implement some basic camera controls. So we need to import our containment framework here as well. And I forgot to import the CTX MAM core, so we're going to go ahead and add that here. And now we're going to need to go down to the class and derive the delegate into the class so that we can implement this, right? Since obviously we need to implement some code here to implement a camera function here. So we're going to simulate that we have a camera portion of our application. So we're going to initialize some variables To simulate this so that we can show our policy blocking it, we need the classes aren't identified there, so we're going to import the AB foundation here, so those warnings should go away. And now what we're going to do is just paste in a basic function that we pre-created that we're just going to use to simulate initializing that camera operation, so we can show did that camera, the ability to access that camera, succeed or fail. Okay, so now we've got our app completed essentially, right? So let's go back to our endpoint management console, and essentially what we need to do is get our MDX file that we created when we built our application into the console. And so what we want to do is go in here and choose edit. If you didn't already have this here, you would click add, and there will be a note. So there's an upload button. That's where you would upload your MDX file that came out of Xcode. And so if we scroll down a bit here, one thing you'll notice there's options for copy and paste, and unrestricted, blocked, and restricted. Unrestricted means you can copy and paste in and out of the container. Blocked means you can't copy and paste at all. And restricted means you can only do it inside of apps that are in the container signed by your application. So we're going to scroll down here, and you notice we're going to turn on the block camera. You also notice at the top there is an allow app compliance issues with a warning, and you can turn that on so that if you messed up something in your compliance or implementation, the app will still run, let you do it. And then what you want to do is a delivery group and assign your application to a particular group of users. In our case, we did all users. So now what we've done is we've switched back to Xcode, and we're going to set some breakpoints here at the point where it would try to access the camera. And so you can see we have our iPad available here. We're going to test run this app and debug it essentially. And you notice the app pause here at the unable to access the back camera, which is essentially what we expected, right? You're trying to use a camera, we're blocking it, right? And so let's go back to the iPad. You see that there's a compliance warning here. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, we expected that. And the app basically just opens up another page with a browser hitting iOS. Notice we can move in and out of pages here. And what we're going to do is try and do a copy of some text here. And what this is going to show is that while our app is signed here inside of this, if I were to go to another application like Chrome, for example, on the device and try and paste it, you can't really see it here, but I'm trying to double tap or tap with my finger here, and there's no option to paste. So that shows that data can't leave the container and go out and be copied and pasted, right? And so notice our app is still functional, all is good, but we've protected data from leaving the container, so we've succeeded in our